and what our kids need from us today that we need to really think about changing or revising to ensure that we are providing the best quality education for our students. Several years ago, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, we embarked on a similar process with the high school, really looked at our traditional high school model and said, what is it that our kids need from us today in order to thrive in this ever-changing world? And we had a big committee came together. We did a lot of research and a lot of study, and we really redesigned our high school model with the intent in mind to make sure that our kids were getting what they needed to thrive in this ever-changing world. And we're seeing the benefits of that. It's always good to go back and say, are we doing the right work? Are we getting the results that we want from what we currently have in place? And so it was a real good opportunity to pull together a group of people to really engage in that study and really look at what is the current experience of our students and what are some of the things that we might need to change in order to make it even better. So the goals of the design team was really to gain a greater understanding of those best practices for middle school and young adults. It has evolved. The education that our kids need today is much different than it was even 4 years ago. So we really did take that into consideration, look at the best practices in the latest research. Some of the outcomes that we wanted to accomplish was to develop a middle school profile. We have our graduate profile, our profile of a graduate, but we really thought this is about our middle schoolers. And what do we want them to know and be able to do when they leave 8th grade? And how does that prepare them for what they're going to experience in high school? So we wanted to develop a middle school profile, and we really wanted to develop a whole district-wide middle school concept for Grand Island Public Schools. So if your child is in middle school and we think about what our kids get no matter what middle school they attend, that those supports, those experiences are there for our students. And we know we have a lot of students that do transition from one middle school to the next. There's some movement. And what we want to make sure of is that our students have those same opportunities no matter which school that they go to. So we really, part of this is also just, there's a lot of work that's got to go into this, and we're still really in the midst of, what's the implementation look like? What are some of the things we still have to unpack? We still are getting feedback from teachers, which is really valuable and important to us. So when we think about, what are those next steps? How do we implement this? We really want to involve our teachers. I will share with you that our principals, we have done some focus groups, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and some other avenues of getting feedback from our teachers. But really the first time that they've seen the same presentation was just last Friday. So this information was kind of new and raw for a lot of our middle school folks, and I know they're still processing, but they're giving us some amazing feedback, and we look forward to really involving them in the process as we continue to move forward with the implementation plan. So now we're looking at setting those priorities for creating that developmentally responsive middle school schedule, and we know that we want to set it up for success. We want to do right by our students, but we also want to make sure that we're bringing along with us all of the people that can make that happen. So I'm really excited about what's to come, and we know that we may have to go slow to go fast. So those are the things that we're thinking through as we develop the implementation plan. We engaged with some creative leadership solution external consultants. These are experts in the field that came in and worked with us throughout the process. They did the planning behind the scenes. They actually brought, really helped lead all of our meetings, helped guide us in some of our decision making. So really appreciate Dr. Ann McCarty, and she's even willing to come and visit with you at some point if you're interested in hearing her speak. But she presents all over the country, and her focus has been in middle school. So we really appreciate her expertise. And then Dr. Drew Tomlin, who is currently a middle school principal in Ohio, and he definitely champions this work and has been a big part of our decision-making process as we went through the design work. This is the design team, so you can see there are representatives of parents and teachers and administrators, and we had some board members that were able to participate. Not everybody could come to every meeting because we held those during the day. But we did get lots of feedback from all different stakeholders. And I will say probably our most valuable participants were our students, and you get to hear from them tonight. So excited to have Caitlin and Isabella here. Just to give you a little bit of background of how much time or what the context of the work that we did, we spent 5 days and 40 hours together. That was just the time that we spent together researching, talking about the middle school experience and learning about actually getting to know each other too, as well as a design team. A lot of, there's a lot of, philosophy, just beliefs and practices and values that came out during this process, and it was really important for us to be able to engage in some of this work to really try to come to what is it that we believe in Grand Island Public Schools about the experience for our students. So the 5 days and 40 hours is just a representative of the time together, but there were many hours that spent in planning and preparation as well. There were 35 to 40 members represented at our meetings. We surveyed teachers. Out of all the teachers we surveyed, we had 100 responded across the 3 middle schools. We held a teacher focus group at each school, so total of 40 teachers that participated in those focus groups in addition to, that was following the teacher survey as well. And then we held student focus groups. We held one focus group with 12 kids at each of those. And those students were randomly chosen for those focus groups, so it was really exciting to spend time with them. I can't even count the hours spent behind the scenes. Of course, our 3 middle schools. Snacks were a big hit, especially for the kids. We had 6 students involved, and that was probably their favorite part. I don't know if they'll tell you that, but the snacks are pretty good. The awesome feedback from the students, it was priceless. We can't even put that into any sort of number. So of course we're talking about Grand Island here. This was just a fun fact that Drew put in here with the numbers. There's only 2 districts in the United States named Grand Island, and they obviously put that in because they got confused when people said, hey, where are you going? They're going to Grand Island. Well, you're going to New York? No, Nebraska. They're like, oh. And we're like, yes, Nebraska. Of course, the total number of years all 3 middle schools have been serving students. I'm not sure where Drew got that number, but I want to kind of check that out. Looks like a research problem to me. Total number of students served at that point was 9,920 that he pulled off of some data. Number of pages in our strategic plan, 19, because they read it page by page. We have 1 dog and 2 cats represented as mascots. We thought that was kind of fun to put in there because that is what helps identify who we are. And then, of course, there are 8. I'm going to share with you the 18 characteristics of a successful middle school according to the Association of Middle School Level Educators. And so this document just kind of gives you a little summary of what we kept coming back to when we think about what are the things that we want to make sure and consider and think about in our design for our middle school experience. Of course, you can see those essential attributes, and I don't think we can argue any of those for when we think about what we want for our young adolescents. When we get into the characteristics, we call out a little bit of the culture and the community, and we know that right now that we really want to have that warm, welcoming, and inclusive environment, that is so important that our kids walk into our schools feeling safe, that they have a predictable, they have an environment where there's high expectations, and that it's safe for them. Some of the other things that go along with this culture when we did the focus groups, the theme that the students were sharing was just like they really appreciated having a connected adult, and many of them said they felt like they had that in our schools, and so that just really helped us kind of see the value of that they called that out specifically. Of course, the curriculum instruction, that is obviously what we're here for. We want to make sure that our kids have what they need to be successful no matter what choices they make. But really focusing on at the middle school level, what are those things, those specific things that our kids need to know and be able to do. And, at this point, our kids are really trying to figure out what their strengths are, who they are. So being healthy, what are those competencies that we want them to grow into. And then the leadership in the organization, some of the things that we really focused in on, those policies and practices that are student-centered, they're unbiased, and they're fairly implemented. And so just thinking about what that shared vision looks like. And that was the focus of what you're going to hear tonight. You're going to hear what we identified as a shared vision and what we identified as the learner profile. I'm going to bring up our students, Isabella and Caitlin, and I'm going to allow them to just share with you a little bit about their participation on the design committee, what were some of the things that they learned, and what they're most excited about going forward.
Thank you. I think a lot of what we learned was about not only what we're learning about in the future and how we can improve how the kids learn in the future, but also focusing on the present and how we can help the students now. And if we can prepare for them now, we can help them in the future.
So one of my main focuses that I found in our group was making sure that every student was able to have a voice in our school system and have a voice in the classroom to improve their learning and others' learnings, and that these we can do stuff like the middle school design team to help redesign stuff that we find that's not right or that doesn't fit for most students.
Nothing else you want to say? Do you want to just introduce who you are and what school you're at?
I'm Isabella Bramble. I'm 14 and I go to Barr Middle School.
I'm Caitlin Camplin. I'm 13 and I go to Westridge.
They were so fun to have as part of our groups, and I think they just they found their voice, and it was absolutely fabulous. So we had a couple teachers that were going to join us, but we're not able to make it. I saw Amy, you're here. I don't know if you want to say anything about your experience on the design team. I didn't know you were coming to.
You're catching me off guard.
You don't have to. I just thought
Okay.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I thought since you're here, and if you did want to just say something about your experience, I want to give you the opportunity. So, okay.
I was glad to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Amy was great, and I'm putting you on the spot, so I'm sorry about that. But she was great to have a part of it, and Amy came on board a little bit later because we're missing some representation of teachers, and man, she was, I just really appreciate her professionalism and just being a representative on the team. So I'm going to turn it over to Kayla Wickman, and you all have in front of you a document that just kind of outlines and summarizes kind of our purpose, our commitments, what we designed as our middle school profile, and she's going to explain and walk through that for you.
So before I talk about that, I really just want to emphasize the importance and the value that the students brought to the team. I've spent my entire career in middle schools, love middle schools, no desire to do anything else other than work with middle school kids. I'm a middle school parent too. But sometimes I think you lose sight of how things have changed since we were in middle school, the different things they face, what their interests are. So being able to hear that throughout the process really was priceless for us. So I want to thank you guys as well as the other kids that aren't here today that helped us in the process. So with that being said, middle school kids are definitely different. They're going through a stage in their life where they're trying to figure out who they are and what they believe, and we need to make sure we're supporting that. So one of the first things that the middle school design team did was develop a purpose. What is the purpose of middle school? So GIPS ensures middle school students will develop their social, emotional, and academic selves in safe and collaborative learning environments. We know that their social and emotional and academic selves are changing quite a bit from 6th grade to 8th grade, and we need to support them through all of those changes. So in order to do that, we came up with some commitments. So through advocacy and community partnership, we commit to creating safe learning environments where students can take risks. We know that if they don't feel safe in school, they're not going to be willing to raise that hand and answer that question. They're not going to be willing to ask questions, so we need to make sure that safety is there. We commit to building and sustaining relationships. Okay? Middle school teachers are great at that, but we also know that it's true. Middle school kids don't care how much you know until they know that you care. Not just about your subject matter, but what's going on in their personal lives, what happened at school that day. So we want to make sure those relationships are present. We commit to high expectations where all students can learn and grow. Kids are coming in at different stages and across the board. We need to make sure that we're giving them input on what they're learning, but we're also meeting them where they're at. We commit to collaboration and shared leadership with stakeholders. I hate to admit this, but reality is we had a lot of guest speakers coming into our buildings and helping out before the pandemic. And since we kind of shut things down, we haven't done a great job of inviting stakeholders in. We need to make sure that we get back to inviting them into their building, letting them know that they're wanted. So we commit to using data and strategies to support developmentally appropriate practices. And while we'll look at state testing data and use that, but it also comes down to everyday data, right? Who didn't understand a particular concept? How are we allowing teachers and helping teachers to support them in reteaching that? And lastly, we commit to helping students develop and use their voice with respect and purpose. We want middle school students to know that if they have an issue, we can help them. We're there for them to come to us. They need to be able to self-advocate, and they need to understand how to do that in a respectful way. They're just starting to learn their voice, right? We want to make sure that when they go up to high school, they understand how to use it appropriately and how to get their needs and wants met. So through that as kind of our grounding, we started to develop our North Star. What is our middle school learner profile? What is it that we hope to see? So when students leave middle school, we want to make sure we have confident communicators. We want to make sure that they can listen, write, and speak effectively. We want to make sure we have creative problem solvers that are solution focused, that engage respectfully and reflect on those choices. We know that middle school kids are going to make mistakes, right? We all do it. Even as adults, we make mistakes. We want to make sure that our kids are able to reflect on that and to come up with creative solutions to try that problem again so that next time they're faced with it, things turn out different. We want to make sure they advocate for themselves and others. We want to make sure they're self-aware and articulate in their thought and their needs and able to use and identify their strengths. Unfortunately with middle school kids, a lot of times they tend to see what they're not good at. We need to make sure that every student who leaves our building understands what they are good at, and that that's a focus. We also want to make sure we have resilient learners, students who are goal-driven, connected, determined to achieve, understand themselves and perspective of others. Again, they're going to make mistakes, right? We need to make sure that if they hit a stumbling block, they're able to get back up and keep going. So through that's led us to some program highlights. Some things are going to be staying the same, and then there are going to be some changes. So staying the same, we know professional learning communities are important. They provide that continual emphasis on and value in protected planning and professional learning time. I can tell you we have absolutely amazing middle school teachers in GIPS, but they need time to collaborate. They need time to grow. So we're going to make sure that that stays protected. We're going to keep middle school teams. Okay? For those of you new to the board, in middle school, we really value making sure that students have the same science, social studies, math, and language arts teachers, so those teachers can collaborate around that student need and problem solve to help kids. So required courses by Rule 10 are going to stay the same. So we will still have PE, health, financial literacy, and those college career readiness skills. And then the school day is going to remain the same. We're not proposing a change. We know high school and elementary recently had a change to their day, so we just want to be clear, middle school will still be 8:15 to 3:45. So part of our new vision is moving to semesters. Right now at the different middle schools, elective courses are different lengths depending on which building you attend. That makes it really hard to get curriculum aligned and some other things for students that move between buildings. So by moving to semesters, we can have extended electives, intervention, and enrichment, and help to align with what the academies of Grand Island Senior High currently do. Core instruction will move to 60 minutes. So all 4 core classes, math, ELA, social studies, and science, will all be going to 60 minutes. This will make sure that students have time to achieve the standards in those 4 core areas. We heard quite a bit from our math and our language arts teachers that they felt like a 90-minute block was just a long time for kids to focus in. We heard that from our students as well. We heard a lot from our science and social studies teachers that they wanted more time. So this gives everyone what they want. So intervention, extension, and enrichment time will go to 45 minutes. So that increases time for core instruction intervention along with programming supports. So we're going to be able to use this time to make sure that our gifted and talented students are receiving supports and growing too. We're going to be able to use it for our EL students and our special education students. We're also going to be able to provide extension opportunities for students that go beyond what they're learning in their core classroom. We're increasing advisory time to 30 minutes. It's only 10 more minutes than what they currently get, but that 10 more minutes will allow us to make sure that we're meeting all of those things in that learner profile. Electives. We're looking at some different electives. Right now, elective courses that students get to take vary based upon the middle school they attend. So we're hoping to align those between the 3 middle schools. You can see what they may be, and we use that term because we're planning on meeting with those elective teachers later in January to make sure that they all have input on what that looks like and not just the middle school design team. So that'll help with developmentally appropriate courses to foster growth and development of students and decision-making abilities, life skills, and relationships. And lastly, each middle school will have a band and orchestra teacher assigned to that building. Right now, we have amazing band and orchestra teachers and programs here in GIPS. But part of the challenge is we only have them for a third of the day. So right now at Westridge, for example, we have them in the middle of the day. We can only offer 4 sections of instrumental music, or 4 sections of band and 4 sections of orchestra. By having them all day, we'll be able to expand that. It is going to look different. We'll still be able to have 2 teachers, for example, in 6th grade band classrooms, but they won't be necessarily the current band teachers that are in there. So it'll be 1 band teacher with the orchestra teacher's support or another music teacher's support. So it will look differently. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Mr. Covarrubias.
Good evening. I'm Josue Covarrubias, principal at Barr Middle School. Had the privilege of being a part of this design team from the beginning when we first met with the entire group, as well as some initial conversations that occurred over a school year ago, and then some follow-up conversations since we've been meeting to continue discussing things that you've already kind of seen some presentation about already, including the schedule. So that was one big thing that we knew was going to be a change. Currently, where our 3 buildings have 3 different schedules, and it creates some issues when it comes to number one, definitely like when students transfer from one building to another, but beyond that, some equity issues that we've realized because of different schedules, different timing during the day, as well as different approach with the way that classes are scheduled throughout the school year. Different kids are getting different experiences at the 3 middle schools. And so we thought that it was really prudent to make sure that one of the things that we were common about when we came out of this design process is that we had a common schedule across the 3 buildings. So you already heard Dr. Palmer and Mrs. Wickman talk a little bit about some of the changes that came with that, and you can see on the board here what came out of that process. What we also wanted to highlight with this is there was a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, if you will, that came with the work of designing a common schedule. Our buildings up until this point have been able to have some autonomy in the way that we've created some schedules. And because we work so hard at each individual building to try to meet the needs of our kids, we really get bought into the practices and the procedures that we build at each of our schools. And so looking at a schedule change meant that all of us were going to be looking at something somewhat different, but all for the purpose of a greater common good of the entire district and GIPS. So through that process of the design team, the 2 consultants that came in showed us a lot of schedules. I mean, we looked at the gamut from looking at block scheduling to individual period schedules to modular schedules. And we kept going back to, every time that we saw a new schedule, kept going back to what are we trying to accomplish? As we look at the possibility of a new schedule, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? And ultimately what ended up coming forward back every single time as we kept coming back to when we had the conversations with our teachers, when we had the conversations with our students, what were the things that were ringing true across the 3 buildings? And ultimately, instead of choosing one of the many schedules that they showed us, we came together and were able to say, what does it need to look like here for us? And so then the three middle school administrative teams with our district leadership, using a lot of that feedback, ended up landing here. It is somewhat of a change in our schedules, in different buildings, maybe more than others. But what we're proud of is that moving forward, we will be able, maybe more than ever before, to say that there's going to be some equity in the way that we approach middle school scheduling, middle school experiences for kids. I'm also a middle school parent. I don't have to worry about at my child's school they have this experience where down the street it looks different. Because we all know that all of our kids are also hopefully going to Grand Island Senior High. And if there's different experiences, different schedules, then they're also having different levels of preparation as they go to Grand Island Senior High. So, from what you can see here, those are things that we've agreed to be common across. We do have some ability for a little bit of autonomy, staying true to those things that we've decided to be common across. So we have the ability to kind of change some orders of classes during the day. Each building has kind of built some things that do work for them. For example, at Bar, our lunch schedule looks a little different than the other two buildings, and so we have a little bit of autonomy to figure out, can we keep some of the things that we're doing in order to keep some consistency in the way that things have been, while also committing to what we've decided to be common about. Different buildings have different footprints size, right? So at Bar, when you go from the 3rd floor on the 7th grade to the North Wing Health area, it takes a little bit longer than it might take at Westridge to go from one class to another. And so where maybe at one building they may only need 2 minutes of passing time between these two periods, maybe at our building it's more like 3 or 4 minutes in different times. So some of that give and take, coming from that. But again, all inside of that common, trying to stay as close as we can to that 60, 45, 45, 30, and 30 minutes, and trying to access that.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So really, just think about next steps. Like, all of this is just, we know that change is kind of hard sometimes, and when you're not part of the visioning process, you're not part of that study group, it takes a little while to really unpack it. And so we really want to be cautious and thoughtful in our plans moving forward and in the implementation steps to make sure that we're being considerate of all the implications, right? Sometimes when you design something, you don't really know, like, what's the effect going to be until you actually implement. We've got to be able to put a little bit of trust in the work that's happening and say, we got to stay focused on what the outcomes are. We also know that we do have buildings that do have different students with different needs. And so this is just kind of like the ground. This is what everybody gets. But we know that there are other buildings where there's going to be in addition to supports. And that's also supported by things like Title I funds or, additional funds that they get, that they can bring in those additional things that help support that in addition to need, whether it's resources or interventions or activities for those students. So we just want to be clear that we're not trying to make every school look the same. We're trying to provide an equitable opportunity for our students to make sure that we are preparing them for, to be successful as they go into that next level, knowing that we have to also consider those in addition to supports, and we have funds for those as well. So our next steps, we're thanks to Dr. Tom Jack. She's really detailed and has really outlined and constructed a task list that everybody's, really paying attention to and adding to and really thinking about what is our implementation plan for 23, 24, 24, 25. We've given you, this is the design that really surfaced based on the study that we did. Now, are we going to be able to implement all of that next year? I don't know. I mean, those are the things that we have to unpack with the team. But there are certain things that if we make this change, we've got to make this change, right? So some things will have to go together. So we've just got to continue to talk through that and say, what's our priority? What are we implementing 23, 24? What are the things that we need to wait for and implement in 24, 25 because we're going to need more time with it. We know we need to continue to share with our stakeholders, getting it out to parents, continuing to bring it back to our staff and investing in their feedback. And then really, but we do have a sense of urgency in the fact that for this next year, the course offerings, because we know the schedules we have to develop those schedules. Kids start making course choices soon, so we want to make sure and have some of those solidified by the end of January, early February. So our principals are putting in a ton of time. I think I've taken way too many hours from them in the last 2 weeks, just trying to talk through some of the details and getting feedback. And, you know, and I know we really want them to continue to be in their buildings. So we're trying to be cognizant of that and paying attention to that too. But we also want to move the work forward. So mid-June, you know, we definitely want to have the student schedules completed and ready to go for August so that those schedules, those rosters can be shared with our teachers and prepared for students. And then, of course, you know, we've got an opportunity to attend a middle level leadership conference at the end of June. I'm going to be traveling with several of our principals and some teacher leaders and academic coaches. I'm excited about being able to go and be with them, with other middle school leaders across the United States, really bringing in some of our problems of practice that we think we still need to solve and be able to have the opportunity for professional growth. And then our teachers and curriculum coordinators, big part of this too is just what is the work now. So if we are redesigning some courses or we have to you know, shift some of our curriculum, you know, that's the work our curriculum coordinators will be really assessing and saying, what does that take? What do we need for that? Because we're going to have to designate some funds. We're going to have to designate some time and some of their expertise as well to make sure that happens. So with that overview, I guess I just open it up to questions, and you can pose them to any of our members. You know, they're here tonight that, you know, that have been part of the process. I think they can answer those as well.
Mr. Linsky?
It's not really so much a question as I just want to applaud your guys' work. This is a really, really good plan. I love it, on board with it 100%. Especially with the to go back to what I was talking about with Isabel, with the fine arts, with the band and the orchestra. We've all been there, middle school, some of us junior high, just to age myself, but it's a hard, those years are hard for any kid. And I just remember when I was in junior high that the band teacher wasn't there all day, and if you needed extra help, you almost had to work around their schedule, and it was very, very difficult to do that, to the point where I had several friends, by the time they got to the high school, they weren't in it anymore because they needed that extra help, and they could have done it. I know they could have, but it just wasn't there. So I applaud all this, but I'm really, really excited about getting those music kids the help that they may need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Jergens, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer, and all of the team who have spent time putting this together. Number one, my name should not be on this list. I deserve 0 credit for this. I could not attend anything. I was like, why is my name on this? Don't give me credit for this. Anyway, thank you. Number two, this is clearly so thought out. So much time has been put into this, but are there any points of apprehension? Has anyone spoken up in opposition to any element or elements of this?
Great question. And I don't know if it's against as much as, you know, there's always going to be apprehension or concern when there's change, because one, there's still not a lot of clarity for everyone about what does this really mean for me and what does this really look like. And everyone knows, there's no secret, it's hard to recruit teachers and getting the right teachers in place. And so I think that's all, you know, it's also like, are we going to designate and commit to what it's going to take to make sure that, like with ELA and math, if we, you know, science and social studies, this actually could result in us needing to add additional, like half teams or something like that to actually accommodate the numbers, so that our class sizes stay, you know, in line really for our teachers. But will we be able to find the teachers? We're committed to the change, but there's, you know, we're just in this moment in time when it's been difficult to hire teachers. So I think that definitely has surfaced as a concern, and they've been, you know, it's on top of mind. Lots of conversations about, okay, so then what's plan A, what's plan B? How do we make this happen, right? So there's a lot of problem solving still going on, a lot of conversations with teachers that are happening and wanting to involve them in the process. So yes, that's kind of what I'm hearing the most.
But as a quick follow-up question then, does this require the loss of any current coursework, any courses at all within our 3 middle schools?
For example?
For example, the rumor mill at Walnut Middle School. I have it on great authority. I have an 8th grader at Walnut. there's a rumor that the sewing class is going away, and she is deeply passionate about it. And so this is my follow-up to Dr. Palmer per my 8th grader.
Yeah. Yeah, the course designs are really now just being aligned to college and career readiness. And so we're going back to those standards, really focusing in on what do kids need. That is an amazing opportunity for kids. It would be a great club. We don't want it to go away. We still want kids to have those types of experiences. But what we designed during the school day, we're really trying to really center into what are those college career courses and what are the standards that they're aligned to make sure that we're able to plan and prepare for that across. We don't have that opportunity at Westridge and Barr, for kids to engage in that. So we're really trying to build that experience across the board, and then definitely want to keep those types of opportunities for kids available, but they could be offered in different ways. So, yeah, of course.
I literally just talked about this with some teachers this morning. So I think another thing that we need to remember is these courses haven't totally been developed for that extension time. So we really are putting forward to our teachers coming up at their CIA day, what are the gaps, right? What are the interest areas that our kids have that aren't here anywhere? So it can be things like sewing club. And so our teachers at each content area will be helping to come out with those things. Then we're going to take those options that the teachers thought were missing and put those in front of students, right? What do you think of these as your ideas to help narrow that down? Because we know our teachers can't teach everything, there's just not enough time in the day. But so that students have some say on those extension courses that are going to be offered from there. So those things don't have to go away. We just have to find what's important to our kids, what's important to our teachers, and build those out. So
Thank you so much for that. I would just request that clarity be really pumped out, because that is so important. That's a great part of the story. Thank you for that.
Mr. Sykes?
Dr. Palmer, it's kind of based on one of the answers you gave to Ms. Juergens about the need for additional teachers potentially in classrooms, and you're talking about moving forward. If you are, because as I'm kind of looking at, I would have to do very quick math to understand how it would impact classroom ratios for those middle school students. Probably in, I'm not sure which courses those might be, but it could push those numbers well over 30. So if we can't find those educators, is it like pushing forward no matter what, or is it this is a good idea when we are ready to move? Because I think that'll probably be an important question for teachers to hear and people in the building.
Absolutely. And those are still things we have to unpack, right? Because the teachers were the ones that really brought it up. Like we kind of just shifted, we had higher numbers in ELA and math, and so we added, some staff to help accommodate, those 28 to 30 class sizes or above. So when we shifted the time allocations to 60 minutes across the board, it just kind of shifted those numbers back into science and social studies. So it does increase their student numbers, and that's what came to the surface from the teachers on Friday. So obviously that's just coming back for our discussion to say, like, what do we do? Do we need to? Can we make this work and still accommodate the class sizes to make sure that we're not overburdening our teachers? If not, we can slow some things down. We want to make good decisions, right? Because in the best interest of our kids. And we want to make good decisions to help support our teachers in the service of that. So those are things that just kind of surfaced, and we just really it's still in the conversation. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks. My real question, that came up just because I heard how you responded. That one was for Mr. Covarrubias. I heard you mention multiple times about pursuing equity, and I didn't really get to hear what the specific equity that we're solving, what that is, like where the discrepancy is,
Sure.
and how this is going to provide that solution.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think when we first initially began this process, a lot of the discussions that led us, I think, into jumping into a review of middle school were revolved around where were the differences across the 3 middle schools. And not just in scheduling, which is what I talked about earlier, but in experiences as well. over the course of, however many years that middle schools have had some autonomy to kind of run things best fit for their building, it has moved the three buildings kind of in different directions. And so I think some of the inequity maybe that was inadvertently caused, and it wasn't necessarily that it was all negative, but it was inequitable, came down to certain experiences that some kids were having at some schools that others were not. So for example, some class offerings that were offered at one school but not at the other two. The scheduling of some classes allowed some students to have a longer time frame in some courses where maybe it wasn't the same at another school. The intervention periods that had been developed differed in time, differed in length of duration of when kids had those interventions, and also differed in like the approach that we were taking. So some of the inequity maybe that was occurring was maybe more of like the differences that caused some kids to have certain experiences and kids to have other experiences. So a lot of the design, move towards the design work came from trying to figure out where should we be common? What things are okay that we're a little bit different, but are there some things that we want to ensure there's some commonality about with the three buildings? Because as they move on to high school, there's going to be some expectations of certain experiences, certain quality, of instructional opportunities that they may have had, that if we're not ensuring that by creating those barriers, that creates the inequity. Yeah. And can I just touch on that earlier question? I was going to jump up here as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask one more question. Were those inequities in core classes or electives?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To the question earlier about ensuring that those numbers of class sizes were something that we were really truly focusing on. As soon as the realization came that with the shift in the core class times was going to create a flux in now some classes being larger, we immediately went to then bringing that back to the board and discussing with the entire group. We took that to our teachers. When we met with our teachers, we also gave them the opportunity to say, here's some things that we also know we still need to look at, and what ideas do you have? So Friday after our presentation, we stuck around afterwards, meeting with teachers that maybe had like questions or some internal maybe stress about, am I going to lose my job? And what we said the entire time during this design process is, we don't want anybody to leave. We don't want to have to get rid of anybody. We want everybody to be, that's in our building, to be in our buildings. And as a part of that process, how do we make it so that everybody is in a good place being able to teach the things that they're comfortable teaching, that they're certified in teaching? But we also know that sometimes change creates opportunities for us to review some things. We also know, like through attrition of people resigning, retiring, it may provide some opportunities for some shifting in that. And so some of that is, it's a little early in the process to know, will we be able to handle some of those changes internally without having to create major changes for people? But starting to have the conversations already, as Dr. Palmer mentioned, about things like half teams, where we have a smaller group of kids and maybe 2 teachers instead of 4 teachers teaching some core content areas. Walnut actually is a great model example for us, where they already have that working at 6th grade with one of the half teams, and doing it with great success. And so that allows us the opportunity to have some of those conversations. But again, we kept going back to our goal is not to get rid of anybody, and it's also not to like force people to do something that they don't feel comfortable or are certified in.
I want to just maybe add a little bit more to the inequity question. One thing that we really value in Grand Island Public Schools is the work that we've done to develop guaranteed and viable curriculum for our students. That means that we are well prepared, well designed based on standards, and that design of that curriculum and our resources are high quality. It's been a little bit difficult for some of our, especially our elective courses, or our, teachers that teach elective courses, if they're teaching different content areas or for different amounts of periods throughout the day, the time, it's really hard for them to develop that common curriculum. And so their PLCs are a little more just it's a little less productive, because they're not able to say, we teach the same number of days, same number of hours, and I teach less, you teach more, so I have to add things. I have to cut things out. So we're really trying to get more consistent and build in that guaranteed viable in those courses as well, because we want them to be strong courses for our students. So especially as they're tied to career and college readiness, when they go to the high school and they start taking some of these courses, if one student has only had 30 days of instruction, another has 45 days of instruction, maybe in financial literacy or some of these other courses, they're much more prepared and we're already putting them at a disadvantage. We want to avoid that. So that might help. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Ms. Wilson?
Is this going to change like A and B day? Are we having A and B day, or is this just like a?
Yes.
So, I guess I'm trying to figure out again with the math, like how is that going to affect the elective classes? Because I guess I'm worried about there being less options than there are, and then like I know already, like my kids that have gone either are in middle school or have gone through middle school, they'll take vocal music, which counts for like a lot, and then they've taken orchestra, one of them, and the other one took band. So they had then a trimester, 3 trimesters to get in some of the other required like financial literacy. And that worked because they were able to do vocal music one day and then their other one. Is that still going to be available?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that we haven't completely unpacked. That'll still be available, and we're also looking at kind of some creative solutions. So this isn't a promise, it's just an example of a thing we're looking at, is to help give them more choices during that elective time, taking some of the required courses like health and offering a section for those kids that are in band and vocal music during enrichment time. It would take away one of their offerings there, but it would open up an elective slot for those kids to provide them kind of more opportunities. So we do have some opportunities to take health, financial literacy, which is required by the state at some point in middle school, and offering those as an option for kids that are involved, especially it's your ones that are doing both instrumental and vocal music. Those just being year long really limit the other options. So if we can take for those kids, offer some of the required things down in that enrichment intervention place, we can offer more explore opportunities for them.
But then if they needed help with something, they wouldn't be able to get that during the normal school day.
They wouldn't be able, that is correct. If it's an A day, B day, or sorry, if it's an AB intervention, yes, but some interventions will run only A day or B day. So it really just depends on the specific kid and their specific needs.
That just worries me because I know a lot of kids that are in vocal music also play an instrument. So that's gonna, yeah.
Struggle with that now, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. Like that's not a new problem.
No.
Yeah. We struggle with that now. I mean, that's not a new problem. And I think it's going to be a hard one to fix when kids are so involved. We want them to be involved. But unless we lengthen the school day and add, more, it's going to be hard to provide all those options. So, I think they'll continue to problem solve that. I appreciate you bringing up that concern, but it's definitely been a concern all along. Yeah.
Mr. Garcia Mendez?
Thank you. Forgot a little bit of what I was going to say because so many great ideas and questions have already been said. I wanted to touch on the point of equity and kind of, I think a lot of us in the public, but also as new board members, would really appreciate just some more background on the equity. And I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot, like, give me that answer right now, but like, as we're continuing this journey as new board members and what truly is equity, and like it's really just providing the needs for, because everyone has different needs, and it's just making sure that those needs are met, because every single middle school is also different. I remember, I don't know who said it, but that we're trying to get them all kind of to look the same, but also not the same. And it's like, yeah, it's a little bit of both, right? Like you want to have the same playing field, but then also some middle schools need a little bit more of those support systems in place. And also some of those like soft skills. Like I know we want them to be really career and like college ready, but I think also focusing in on some of those soft skills that a lot of students also just don't experience. I just reflect upon my time in middle school, and maybe my white peers kind of got the soft skills from their parents at home, but my parents were like working nonstop meatpacking plant or somewhere else where they didn't get the opportunity to kind of learn those. So that's kind of where equity comes into play. But no, I applaud all of your efforts, Dr. Palmer, and just keep doing what you're doing. And thank you to all the middle school teachers out there, the students, for putting in the work and making your voice heard. Because when the table's open, there's plenty of seats to keep adding more people, and I'm sure you're going to keep adding more people. So if you ever need any connections or help in getting more of those stakeholders at the table, my email, phone number is always open. So yeah, just thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Palmer, I have a couple of questions here. First, what is the time frame for you needing an answer from the board on this? Are you looking at next month?
Say your question again.
I said, what type time frame are you looking at and needing an answer from us that, yes, we're going to go ahead and move forward with this program?
Well, this is information only tonight.
Right.
And what would happen is if, as we work through the task, all the tasks and kind of plan out any proposals, we would bring to you, for info and possibly action if there were some financial or funding needs that we would need from you in order to approve the move to some of the changes. So at this point, it's just information.
It's just information, okay. All right, in regards to the program, by trying to be equitable and making everything the same, are we at any risk of perhaps bringing the performance of one down over the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I want to just really emphasize that when we say we're trying to make the same, that's just the foundation of the work. We have to have systems in place. We have to have guaranteed and viable curriculum for our students across the board. And we have to be able to put our resources to accomplish that, because if we did something different in every single classroom in every single school, we would never be able we would not have a system in place that we could manage or support. So that's just the foundation. I really want to emphasize that we still want to take into consideration, part of the equity is that every student gets what they need when they need it. And so part of the work of our schools is knowing who their students are and what those in addition to supports are. So if we have students at a school that, let's say we've got, when we talk about the soft skills, we have the advisory time. What happens in that advisory time might be stressed. Some of those skills, some of those behaviors might be stressed differently in one school. They may not have to stress it as much or for as long in another school, just depending on what the students need. The intervention and enrichment time really allows us to personalize and differentiate for students based on what they need. So it's really, I want us to just kind of keep in mind that we definitely want to go above and do in addition to supports and be considerate of what our students need in order to make sure that doesn't happen. Because all of our kids have to get to this level. We've got high expectations for all of them, our teachers. That's why they're here. They got high expectations for our kids. They got high expectations for them. So that's our common ground, is to get all kids here. So we definitely don't want to put anybody in a disadvantage. It's going to be important for us to sit back and monitor too, like how are we doing? If we make these changes, how do we know that we're continuing to hit the mark and getting to the level of success that we aspire to get to? So hopefully that answers that question.
Ms. Jurgens? Go ahead.
So my question now is, I heard Dr. Bros in my head saying, hey, could you come back and keep us updated? And I realize you've already sort of acknowledged that, but perhaps hearing from you, if not monthly, depending on the level of progress, the pace of the progress.
Absolutely.
Maybe in a couple of months or something, because there's so much here. I mean, my
Yes.
goodness gracious, the questions that have been thrown at your team already, and kudos to you for trying to come up with as much as you can on the spot. So
Yeah.
I hope that it's not been overwhelming, but the more updates, the better I think it is for us, and the easier it is for us to understand what all you're doing. And
Absolutely.
also just wanting to acknowledge Mr. Covarrubias's efforts in clarifying the equity and inequality, which just for the record, those are not the same things. And we do not need to ever be under the impression that we need to provide every student the exact same things, because that leaves massive gaps for some of our students. So
Absolutely.
thank you for all of this consideration.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Ms. Albers?
So, just really to the board, and Dr. Palmer, go ahead and step in here. So we'll get updates really as they see kind of a financial ticket on this. So if they need more staff, or if they need more equipment, or if they need, so it would go to F&F, and it might go to L4L, and it might go to personnel. And so those would kind of be when we would start seeing what fiscal responsibility the district would have as far as approving anything. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I had one more question here. If I turn back to my page, hold on one second, please. Where'd you go? There it is.
I might want to mention too, while you're finding your question,
You bet.
Our elementary is the same way. Like we have the same number of instructional minutes in all of our elementary schools. So we work with them on their schedules. So when you think about the 14 elementaries, the common curriculum, those types of things. So it's similar, at the elementary level. We're now doing this at the middle school level, and we think about this, the algebra classes, the math classes at the high school. I mean, those are some of the same things that we're trying to do when we say that's the common curriculum.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps.
The question that I had, and I had some individuals contact me about this, and I just wanted to make sure, are there any intentions with this program to perhaps channel kids towards the current model that we have in the high school?
I think our kids could probably speak to that. One thing they told us is don't treat us like high school students, right? They said we're middle school students. You need to help us be middle school students and be the best middle school students that we can be. Now, when we align college and career type of, those courses, that content is definitely going to be developmentally appropriate and based on what middle schoolers need in order to gain the skills that they need to be successful in the high school. So when we think about that experience, we want to make that transition as smooth as possible. So yes, that's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Dr. Palmer? All right, well, Dr. Palmer, thank you very much for your presentation. We also appreciate the others you brought up with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, under information item under 9.2, the 2022-23 project list, we'd like to recognize Mr. Dan Petch.
Thanks, President McFarland. Now, what y'all been waiting for? Project list, and this is an annual thing for us, and I think I'll explain the process a little bit, but first of all, we started this, our conversations, not first with my team, which I'd like to get some props out to my assistant, Kim Grimm, and the rest of the team for all their work on this. We put quite a few hours in developing this, but part of that process is we take our last year's list, and then I go to the buildings and talk with all the principals to find out, what their needs are. Some of the stuff is going to be older items that are on there. Some of the stuff's going to be new things, and so we bring those onto the project list. So when you look that list over, you're going to see the building location at the top there, the summary, district priority, Then building priorities, so that would be some of the principals' priorities as we would go through those lists. Costs are on there, the project type, funding source, and then to the right there's kind of name some of those funding sources. And know how I look at things in the district. I prioritize safety is number one. Number two, we prioritize things such as roofs that would, if we don't fix it, it's going to cause damage, and then more costs arise. And then kind of level three would be some of those things that might be carpet or, things that are needed that don't quite get there. So just that's kind of those couple three levels that we look at. You'll see a lot of safety on here, and you always will. So that's not new. Like I said, this is something we kind of do every year. We have a database that we've built for all buildings that is through our Amoresco program, so that that way we've evaluated all the parts and pieces of every one of the buildings. So this project list then draws kind of off that. So it's kind of a big deal. There's a lot of information here. I'm going to kind of pop down through here probably pretty quickly. Some of the stuff you've heard about already that we've already moved forward with, i.e. those first 10 projects on there are the ESSER 3 projects funded through ESSER 3 dollars. We've talked about, senior high, the addition for the band room, cafeteria, and the security vestibules, connect room, the HVAC upgrade. Then, Walnut with the security vestibule, and then, all the next ones, security vestibules for Howard, Gates. Gates also adding some doors in the pod area there. Lincoln, Wasmer, Westlawn, Newell, all part of that's already funded and moving forward with design. And then we get into some other items, again, safety with bar where, one of the things that's on the consent agenda was the network wiring piece that goes along with this phones, because the 3-story existing part of that building, they don't have phones in the classrooms, which has been brought up multiple times as a safety concern over the last couple of years, so we're going to move that forward. Another one that is a big thing for us that we got a grant for and finally got the thumbs up to move it forward, because these is a carryover from last year, is doing a security camera upgrade at senior high. That's a $500,000 undertaking, which COPS grant pays for about 3/4 of that, and then we have to fund about 1/4 of that out of the general fund. Then also the Neal admin, we're doing a little bit of I call it the phase 2 expansion, and what that is that's going to create some space in our warehouse, adding some offices, moving buildings and grounds in there, and then that'll create a few more offices for the HR area. The total phasing of this building would be, actually there's 5, so this one is probably the easiest of all of them and also less cost. The other ones, as we move through time and the needs arise, then we'll look at if we want to try to bring on, phase 3, for instance. So just kind of moving down that list. Howard, replacing locks with security locks on the classroom doors. Dodge Elementary, same thing. Westlawn, on the mechanical side, replacing boilers. Engelman, kitchen air conditioning unit. Shoemaker, reworking chiller compressors. Neal admin building, adding parking lot lights. Just a FYI, we do actually have a parking lot design that was generated a while back to replace that really nice asphalt parking lot at some point in time with a concrete parking lot. But the one thing that I see right now is I don't see that coming anytime soon because it's such a large job. We need to do something in the way of lighting for the safety of this parking lot. As we all know, we're going to walk out tonight and go, where's my car? So continue on down. Gates Elementary, A piece that we're gonna take off of our initial design of the project we were gonna do there is create a little bit better drop-off pickup on the front side of the building on that west entrance. Senior high, to replace the flooring and do in the media center and new furniture for there, something we've been trying to get to for half a dozen years easy. So it's really kind of a high need with, if you've ever seen the carpet in there. And then also senior high, installing protective film on the classroom windows. Came across a product that we can utilize existing door windows, put a film over there that will be impact resistant. Just again, kind of one of those things where if you've ever seen those windows, they're kind of large and they are not much protection. Newell, adding a set of doors in the media center on each side there so that if we ever get into a lockdown need, that we have a way to lock down that media center, similar to most of our other media centers in the district. Seedling, got some roofing that we need to replace. Walnut, got a door issue on number 8. We want to replace that door. Wyandotte Learning Center carryover from last year, creating a little bit better science lab area. Howard, doing some carpet replacement in their media center and then also their teacher's lounge. Senior high carryover from last year, replacing the flooring on the stairs that go up to that location. Grand Island Senior High, Hall of Honor, which is Foundation's working on a plan there. With the security vestibule work we're going to do, we'll be able to create a little bit better, same location, but a better situation for them to put in a updated Hall of Honor that's, kind of one of those interactive touch TVs. So kind of looking forward to that. We've been really working on that for quite a while, and I mean 10 years. So then carryover from last year, Bar Middle School having some issues on the south addition there with some water. And then West Lawn, hopefully replace gym floor. Engelman, water heater replacement. Bar starting a phasing on irrigation system because their whole practice area outside the football field is non-irrigated right now, so it gets pretty tough to maintain that location during the summertime. Engelman, also some roofing that needs to take place, and then also a sidewalk on these sides too small, and we want to extend it out for safety. Senior high, water heater in the west mechanical room. Howard, projector and sound system in their gym. Success Academy, security camera upgrade. Westridge, adding a sidewalk for safety on the 13th Street. And then Dodge, doing the network and phone replacement. One thing I'll say is this is a pretty large list. General fund bottom line, $1.5 million. I don't have $1.5 million. So we will, as we typically do, we move through these projects and hopefully we can accomplish somewhere, around 80% is kind of what we shoot for. There's other factors that are going to be in play here so that when we go out for a proposal for this third big project with security vestibules, if we are not able to get all those paid for through the ESSER dollars, I'm going to take those on with my budget to make sure that those projects do get done. That will impact then all the projects down towards the bottom here. So those last 8 projects we put on here really to say if we can do those, we will. If we are not able to accomplish those, this summer, this year, then they'll probably move forward on to next year's project list. And that's just kind of what we do. If we can't get it done this year, we'll move it forward just depending on what the level of need is. Again, I'll always fall back on safety. Things that have to do with safety, they're going to get the dollars first. So I rattled there a lot. There's a lot here. Questions right now?
Seeing none, you may go ahead and, oops, I'm sorry.
So basically, and I guess maybe just here's my question: is you have the Hall of Honor on here at District Priority 30, yet you have things like making sidewalks for safety wider and replacing part of a roof to make it better below that. What's your reasoning there?
It's funded. It's funded. A little bit of that too. When you look at that list, for sure that first half of that list are the ones we're going to move hard on and we think we can fund. And then I'm going to say that other half of that list, we're going to do those as we can. Also, some of those came in a little bit later during our process, and so they didn't get moved up quite as far. So when I see the safety on those are going to be my priority. So there's a pretty darn good chance we'll be able to accomplish that task.
And I'm guessing some of this being ESSER funds, some of this being foundation funds, and some of this being general funds, we can't move the shells around.
Not move the shells around. Thank you.
Mr. Hawley.
Mr. Patch, with excuse me, the ESSER's funds, are we kind of getting to the end of where we have to use those? Is this the most we have, or?
Yeah, we have a certain amount. It's a little under 9 million. And we've got 3 large projects that are taking the majority of that. And so then we've got a balance towards the end. We have till 2024 to actually do a final spend on those. Although our goal is to try to get everything done and 100% complete by the fall of 2023.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Was it a year or two ago, you guys, we brought some people in and they did that software where they evaluated all of our facilities and graded them. Are you guys still utilizing that in these decisions?
Absolutely. That's part of what I'd mentioned when we put all that information together. Amoresco is the company that we were working with there. And so that's an active part of how we plan and then how we generate our project list. Also know that, just that the building index piece that we had, we'll be talking later on in the year about master facility plan. And so we'll bring some of that data with us, along with data from some other departments. So then we can talk about some other big picture, long-term. We used to call it the 10-year plan. Now we're calling it the master facility plan. So look forward to a retreat at some point in time here later on this year, and we'll come back on the big picture plan. And that's like I said, just like you said, that's part of the data that we use for this.
Awesome. One follow-up question. I ask this every time, I think. We talk about prices, and I know we've got the numbers here for the estimates that you've had or that you've put together to do these things. Are you still seeing any prices going down in certain areas that we really need some work in?
I do not see any prices coming down, but the good thing is that it's leveling off.
Good.
And the contractors are somewhat getting caught up. That's what I'm seeing. I've talked to, for instance, a GC for this upcoming project, and they're pretty interested. When we went out for proposal for the camera system, in the past, sometimes I might have 2 guys show up, and this time we had 4.
Wow.
With the wiring project for BAR, we also had multiple contractors show up instead of just 1. So that's good to see. That'll benefit us in the long run, so we can not end up with numbers that are farther out than we think they are. But the proviso, these are estimates that we have here. We've actually did see a lower cost when we got the pricing for the locks for the Dodge project, that they came down from what our estimate was. So we're hopeful.
Awesome.
I am scared about this last ESSER 3 set of projects. So the hope for those, just as I'll get into construction update, but that we should be out for proposal here the month of February.
Great.
And so we'll see at the end of next month what we have. And I've mentioned before how Davis-Bacon, that affects our prices substantially. Again, have talked with some of our local contractors, and they're getting used to the Davis-Bacon, and so I'm hoping that we're not getting, use the right words, we're not getting taken advantage of just because it's, federal dollars, so.
Sure. Thank you.
Ms. Jurgens? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Albers was first.
Thank you. So with these projects, are you using the construction management form of bidding or building for any of these or for any of the next ESSER funds? Is that, we had approved that a while ago, but I know it was kind of slow to take off because it was hard to get bids. And so, but it's encouraging now that you're going to get more bids.
Yeah, these projects really aren't at the cost level, the high that we really would need to go that route or consider that route. And honestly, that's just a decision we'll make, when we get to a bond time of what direction we want to go, if we want to stay with our traditional hard bid or if we want to consider that construction management route.
So when you say you're scared for the next round of ESSERs,
Yeah.
Are you talking about the bidding process that you're hoping you're going to get bids? Is that what you mean?
On that date when I'm open those bids publicly and in front of the contractors, and I look at numbers that are $1 million higher than I think they should be, and then I fall down on the floor and go into convulsions. We'll see. It's again, this Davis-Bacon stuff that kind of impacted us several times, and hopefully it's not as bad as it has been in the past. Thanks.
Ms. Jurgens?
I'm just recalling not so long ago, as a newer board member myself, I didn't know what Davis-Bacon meant. So I was just curious if any of our new board members might like clarity around that. Or if not, if you know, then you know. Yeah? You want clarity?
Yes.
All right, please hit it.
So with federal dollars, Davis-Bacon Act requires the contractors to pay the prevailing wage in Nebraska. And sometimes they actually think that's other states. But it's so what that requires is to make sure that the contractors are paying their workers that prevailing wage, the fair prevailing wage for the area. And then they also have to document that and keep that information for 3 years, just in case they audit that. So what that does is that requires contractors a lot more work in the office, and their overhead goes up. And so they always make sure that they cover that cost. Sometimes I think they double it, but that's just me. But it is, what they do, and so we just kind of make sure that we're aware and that we do all the paperwork the right way. Dr. Schroeder's been working with us and our contractors to make sure that all that documentation's been coming in on a weekly basis, and so that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Betcha.
Mr. Patch, you can go ahead and go on to 9.3, the construction update.
I was just gonna say, first, Dr. Schroeder, anything I have missed that I should add to on project list?
No.
All right. Exact right answer. Yeah. Again, thanks to my team for the work we do on the project list and everyone that puts in their time, the principals. Not much on the update. Visited the high school a couple different times this week. They did get some of their steel and metal decking on, and so they'll be able to start some roofing process. Run into a few issues on the existing building conditions. So there's an area, the band room piece, that we're in a holding pattern right now, thanks to just older drawings and existing conditions, so we have some structural things we need to work out with our engineers. So as we get those things taken care of, we'll keep moving forward. I mean, they're tented and putting up masonry on the exterior of the buildings, and I looked at that too, and it's coming along real well. So right now we're on schedule on that project. I've talked with our contractor doing the Knickerham project, and we'll a lot of our materials have come in, paid for, so we're not going to have anything potentially missing when we get started with that project here in the springtime, which would be kind of March, April timeframe. And then, of course, I mentioned that our last set of projects going out for proposal here in February. So with that, I'll conclude my report and answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Petch.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your work. Taking care of the plant is no easy task.
So will.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 9.4, Student Representative Report. Mr. Cloutier.
Hello, everybody. So I sort of want to start off with what's kind of obvious. Some of you might not exactly know who I am. This is the first report I've given since the election, and there's been a lot of changes. So I just sort of want to introduce myself not only to President McFarland, but also to the other new members. My name is Zachary Cloutier. I am the student board representative to the Board of Education, student representative to the Board of Education. So sort of what I do is just every month at these reports, I'll sort of give some insight, not only at what I'm seeing at the high school level specifically, but also just some other stuff that might be interesting to know from the perspective of a student. That's sort of what my position entails. So without further ado, I want to start off by just obviously with the situation regarding Dr. Grover and the vacancy in the superintendent spot, there's undoubtedly a lot of strife going on and stuff and stress. And I know a lot of you are parents and have experience in education. So I want to commend you guys for, I mean, we already have, I've seen the list of candidates and stuff. It's been a very like coherent and impressive response from the student perspective. I know not necessarily a lot of students are involved, at this level. I'm sure, I talk to a lot of people, it's like, oh, what does the superintendent do? But for those that are more interested in that and involved, I know it has been impressive. So I just want to thank you guys for that. It's clear that you care about getting someone to fill that role promptly. So after that, now I want to just give a brief overview of some stuff that's going on with like activities, student accomplishments, and stuff like that. There obviously hasn't been a ton since it's only been 2 weeks, and I'll try to be brief. Sorry, but to start off, we've started competition season for show choir and band as well. There'll be the All City Honor Band announced on January 16th, and then they'll have a concert that night. So, and then premiere night was last Sunday for show choir. So, Fine Arts has been starting, their competition season, which is really cool. And then we just concluded the tryouts for the upcoming musical, The Big Fish. So that'll be cool. We're actually gonna host here at Westside Lanes a bowling tournament, cool, which is pretty cool because I don't know if you guys knew this about our bowling team. We're pretty good. So yeah, it's odd. I honestly had no idea that we would be so good when we started this a couple years ago. But yeah, so that'll be cool that we're getting to host that. Hoops Mania is coming up, and also a basketball game on January 28th. We'll get a performance by the little cheerleaders that attended the camp that we put on every year. So lots of opportunities for youth to get involved with activities that through the high school specifically, which is really cool. I mean, those are the sort of things that you want to be able to do as a kid. Not everyone necessarily has a chance, but it's very affordable and accessible for kids from all backgrounds. So very, very good. And yeah, that's about it as far as that goes. So Thank you guys. Just to conclude, it's nice to meet you all, some of you for the first time in person. But yeah, I really look forward to working with you guys. Yeah, and congratulations on your appointment to the board. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cloutier. Appreciate it. Ms. Jergens.
Mr. Cloutier, you didn't mention the winter ball.
Oh,
And I know
yes.
you were there because you were there with one of my children.
Yes, I was.
And that went very
It
well,
was
I'm
very-
assuming.
Very good, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very fun.
Ms. Albers.
Mr. Cloutier, do you know how girls wrestling tryouts were? Have they had those? Or
I believe so, at all levels too, including middle school as well, so.
could you maybe give us some stats on that next month? Like how many
Sure.
people tried out and how many are on the team? And
Yeah, I was sort of waiting on some of that because, sorry about this, a lot of the sports and stuff, we're actually going to have like state competitions or finals, playoffs, whatever it is, just to sort in February. So I didn't want to, but yeah, so next month you'll hear a lot about how all that went, specifically for winter sports and stuff.
And then the fracas is always in February. Does anybody know that? Isn't the fracas in February? Say it again. In December. Oh. What was is there a bigger one? Is that the biggest wrestling tournament that we have here? Okay. I need to get that on my calendar for next year. It's a blast.
The girls did win it. They did win it.
Awesome.
We really need to go next year. We've got to get that on our calendar.
Actually, I'd like to take a moment this time, a little off script here, but we want to thank Angela Dibbert for everything she does for us. She has really been wonderful for the entire board, so thank you for your work. Okay, any more questions? We'll move on to item number 10, reports. And the first report is item 10.1, the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation report. And I believe Ms. Lindsay Jergens will give us an update on it.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. The Foundation's online scholarship application went live on December 1st. Students will be able to apply for 160 scholarships through this one application. It is due February 9th of this year. At their January board meeting, the Foundation Board will induct new board members Kelly Ank, Paul Hoos, Diana Kellogg, and Shane Wisman. They will say goodbye to Todd Ank and Vince Hernandez and appreciate their service. The Foundation has opened the online classroom mini-grant application. This round of grants will be for projects that will benefit students after March or during the spring or summer of 2023. Classroom grant requests will be accepted through February 1st. The Foundation is gearing up for a busy spring. The annual staff campaign will begin in March, and scholarship review will begin in late February. Anyone who would like to volunteer to be part of the scholarship review is welcome as long as he or she is not related to a GISH senior this year. After receiving our numbers from the audit, the Foundation has published our mini-annual report, and that is found at gipsfoundation.org. And that concludes the GIPS Foundation report.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Jergens? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 10.2, the NASB monthly update. And then there was a couple of things I wanted to note here, in particular, under the calendar, the first day of the 108th legislature, first session is on Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. This will be a 90-day session ending roughly June 9th. Day 10 is the final day to introduce bills, which will be January 18th, and then the NASB Legislation Committee meeting will be January 22nd. There will be a Legislative Issues Conference January 22nd to the 23rd at the MSC Suites in Lincoln. And then finally, the NASB Legislative Advocacy Day is April 17th in Lincoln. Ms. Albers, would there be anything you would like to add regarding the NASB at this time?
There is going to be a small group of us at the end of April that will go to DC and meet with some of our state representatives on some of our local concerns. So that's new. They've never done that before. So I'm kind of excited about that with the lineup that they have. And honestly, if other board members are interested, they certainly have opened it up to anyone that's interested in going. And it'll be a very busy, but I think also very informative. And I was actually in the Capitol today. They were submitting bills, and I talked to a couple different senators through Leadership Nebraska, and it was kind of exciting. I love that stuff. So, yeah, there was a bunch of unicameral nerds up there, and I was one of them. And Kendall Bartling, our former student rep, is now a page, so I could wave at him down on the floor, and that was super fun. And I saw our lobbyist Angela, and fun catching up with her. So yeah, there's a lot happening.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, item number 11, the executive session for the purpose of reviewing interim superintendent candidates, GIEA negotiations, and to prevent the needless injury to the reputation of an individual and to protect the public's interest. I am going to entertain a motion for the board to convene to executive session at this time. Mr. Helinski.
I'd like to recommend that the board to convene with an executive session for the purpose of discussing interim superintendent candidates, GIEA negotiations, and to prevent the needless injury of the reputation of an individual and to protect the public's interest.
So moved. Do we have a second? Second, Ms. Albers. Okay. Put it to the question. You may vote. Motion passes. The board will be entering executive session at 7:20 p.m. for the purpose of reviewing interim superintendent candidates, GIEA negotiations, and to prevent the needless injury to the reputation of an individual and to protect the public's interest. And yes, please leave your cell phones and smart watches at the counter if you would, please. Okay, the board has concluded its executive session. The executive session was limited to the topics identified in the motion to enter executive session. At this point, I would entertain a motion to reconvene into open session.
I'd like to make a motion that the board reconvenes from the executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Linsky. Do I have a second? Second by Miss Lisa Albers. I will put the question to a vote. Sorry. Motion passes. We are now going to go back in. The board is now back in open session at 8:16 p.m. Okay. Item number 13, approval of any action deemed necessary as a result of executive session. I would entertain a motion at this point to approve the contract as discussed in executive session for Mr. Matt Fisher. Mr. Helinski.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract for Mr. Matt Fisher as the interim superintendent.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Ms. Lisa Albers. Okay, discussion. Seeing none, we'll put the question to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, we go to item number 14, notification of upcoming board meetings. The next scheduled regular Board of Education meeting will be February 9th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. with the agenda being